So this time we're going to do a reaction video on another content provider, YouTube blogger for One Piece. This one is coming from Jock Review PH. So this is also one of the best review channels, YouTube content providers when it comes to One Piece. You know, anything One Piece, the latest updates of One Piece, spoilers, any information, leaked information. I really love this channel by Jack Review PH. He provides great information, the latest updates of One Piece. This one, he was saying that si Im sama ang nothingness o kawalan, ito ang dahilan kung bakit One Piece. So this means that he was basically saying there that Im sama is the symbol of nothingness or space or void. Sorry about the word space. It should be nothingness or the great void, something like that. So he was saying that Im sama was that symbol. So and then this is the reason why it's called One Piece. There's something about that. So we're gonna play the video and we're gonna make a reaction. Probably we'll pause for a few moments and then I'll get back to the video and pause again just to say in English what he was trying to say in the vernacular. So here we go. So he was saying that in chapter 285, we had like a glimpse or an idea of what would be the powers of the Gorosei based on these shadow figures, these figures in black. So Sabo was narrating to, you know, Dragon and Ivan Cobb and stuff from the Revolutionary Army, that the powers of Imusama was like, it was hellish. So he was saying that Imusama was actually speaking as a third person, and he was referring to himself as Mu. So Mu in the Japanese, yeah, it means nothingness or void. So that's what he was saying there. So those are the Gorosei. And then in the middle you have two eyes, those big eyes right there. It's like the menacing aura of Imusama. So it was saying there that Imusama, it seems like Imusama had no body. He was like, it was his figure there sitting over the empty throne. More of like, it was just like the cloth or the, the cloth that he was wearing, as if the garments that's over there had really no physical form. It was just there, the dress, the coat, the cape or anything that he was wearing seems like it has no physical form. It has nobody that's wearing that. So it's like basically the cloth, that's there present in the empty throne. So it was like there was nothing there. So he was saying there that if Emo was the representation of nothingness, it just means that he really had nobody. Like look at that. Just look at this one right here. It really seems that Imusama had no physical body. He had no physical form, right? So it was like a spirit or something. So he was saying there that nobody should be sitting on that empty throne, and the will of one person is not going to represent the will of everybody. The will of all those nations, all those 20 kingdoms. But so it may be plausible, it may be possible that Musama really had no, physical form, right? So, in order to be consistent with the empty throne, in order to be consistent with nobody should be ruling on that throne, so it meant that it was empty. So Musama was just like a shadowy figure with no body. Could really be possible. So it was just like, if you are familiar with Zetsu from Naruto, it was just like that. So it's just like an abstract or something, maybe a spirit or a phantom, just basically there, clothed in that garment for a monarch, or a monarch, or something like, somebody who's an upper rank in a kingdom, so like a noble person, so a royalty. So, but there was really no body, there was no physical form. Could really be possible. So he was basically saying here that Imo was the contrast to Luffy, because if Luffy was the sun, then Sanganika, like a sun, then Imusama would be the great void, the empty space, right? So saying it's like contrast to each other, and all these Gorosei are representing themselves as the planets. But later on, we'll know that because the names of these Gorosei are actually revealed in the next chapter. So we will know that their names actually had an affiliation with planets. Some of them were even called literally like the planets, but then some were sounding like the planets. So he was basically saying there that the Sun God Nika, Luffy, in his awakened form, can create something out of nothing. Like, he can create those glasses from his hair, right? So can basically create anything that he likes, that he wishes, that he desires. Imo, on the other hand, is like whatever there is that is present, he could turn that into nothing. So like, if Luffy can create nothing, if Luffy could create something out of nothing, then Imo had a reverse power. Just like he can make that something into nothing. Like, he could destroy. He could destroy everything without a trace. He could obliterate anything. He could turn to dust anything. He could disintegrate anything. So he was saying just like that. So it's like in contrast to one another, Imo and Luffy. So that's what he's trying to say. So he was saying that the attack of Sabo was just swallowed by Imusama, so that like it was transformed into something it was transformed into something that is nothing. So it's like Imusama can erase everything. So that's his theory right there. So it's like Imusama is a representation of the void, the blank space, the nothingness, the emptiness. Here, what he was saying was that Oda, Eiichiro Oda might have gotten this idea of creating the Gorosei, the powers of the Gorosei and Ibusama, from this literary work called Where the Wild Things Are, wherein that's a story of a child who was supposed to be in his room and he was getting bored, and so he's thinking about, his mind is going astray and imagining things which are not really there. So yeah, he was saying that the idea of Oda might have originated from there. So so it's like these five creatures were representing the Gorosei, and this one is Im-sama. So he was the king. So and this monsters right here, they look huge, and then the Im-sama was guiding them. They were he was the master of these creatures. So he was trying to say that these are the Gorosei, because really they do have similarities, like this one, the bird one, and then this one with with the horns, and this one with like the snout or something, probably like a baku. This one really looks like a baku, but then the baku really has like the trunk of an elephant, so we don't really know, but the fans might have guessed that the idea of Oda might have originated from here. This Where the Wild Things Are. Yep. Mythical Zoan Devil Fruits for the Gorosei. So this one, they may have resemblance to that Where the Wild Things Are. Probably. So I was saying that the Gorosei might have really come from the Void Century. They may have the most powerful devil fruit abilities just because they came from the Void Century. The devil fruits might have originated from the Void Century. So as I have shared before, that these devil fruits, I really don't think these devil fruits just came out of nowhere. Just like it was being stated by Vegapunk, that these devil fruits just came from the people's aspirations, the people's wishes, their dreams, something like that, and then they just grow to be that fruit, having those powers that came out of their frustrations, their dreams, all their emotions. Somehow I do believe that, because some of those theories they have circulated before, that these devil fruits these devil fruits were just incorporated in normal fruits, just like they are adding fertilizer to a plant or something. Like when you try to water a plant with water, with a dye, something like the dye of a specific color, and then that plant will bear flowers. The color of the petals of the flowers will be like the color of the dye, or the food coloring that will be mixed with the water. So if you are to put blue, something like a blue food coloring in the water, you will mix that, then you will constantly water that to a plant who is in in a pot. Then that plant right there, or you constantly water with some nice food colored water all the time, and that plant will bloom flowers. The flowers, if you are to water that with blue colored water, blue colored food coloring water, it contains food coloring of blue, and then you constantly water that, the flowers, the flowers that are normally that bloom as white, they will bloom as blue because they will get that. So it's something like that. So you try to put in fertilizers, chemicals to the plant, so the plant will, grow those devil fruits. So it's like they are incorporating all of their madness, all of their emotions, aspirations, their dreams into something magical, a science so advanced that it almost seems like magic. So, and then they transform that into like a fertilizer. They put that into the plants, or they inject the plants so that the plants will bear the devil fruits, bear the fruits which will contain devil fruits, something like that. So basically, he was saying that it is really, it could be really possible. It is probable that these five elders have the powers of Mythical Zoan Devil Fruits. So they are really so powerful, extremely powerful. So yeah, they are one of those, almost at the top, except for Imsama. So they are the top of the chain of command of all these forces of the world government. So it is really reasonable that they have very or immensely strong, extremely strong devil fruit powers and mythical zone devil fruits. So yeah, I don't think so though. I don't think that that is an awakening clouds. He was saying that when you are having a zone devil fruit and that zone devil fruit is in its awakened form, you will have like these clouds over your neck, to the nape, to the shoulder, right? Same with Luffy and Rob Lucci, but I don't think this looks like a cloud for an awakened zone. I think this might have been part of what the mythical zone devil fruit is wearing. Like when you're a Buddha, you wear something like the attire of the Buddha. So, and then when you are Sanghatnika, you are wearing the attire of, the sun god. So this may be an attire of whatever, mythical zone devil fruit. So it could be, but I don't. It's not based on the silhouette. I don't think that it's a cloud or something of an awakened zone form. So I don't think it is. So yeah, I was saying that the old man in the samurai is extremely strong. So he was saying that we will go back. So we'll try to go back here. Okay, so he was saying that Saint J. Garcia Saturn was on the leftmost side. So this one right here with the horn. So that is Saint J. Garcia. So he was saying that it really has a close resemblance to the Skull Island of Onigashima. So he guessed that it would be an Oni, and I think that he may be right with that. So But when I search, I also try to search for the mythical powers of these Gorosei. And then I really think that these five are somehow, or in a way, have to be in the form of a yokai, because yokai in the Japanese culture they are part of the Japanese culture. They are very important. They are very indispensable in the Japanese culture. So the Japanese celebrate yokai festivals. They even build shrines, they build statues, they build sacred places for these yokai. These yokai are all around in Japan. They bring, whether they are a good yokai or a bad yokai, they will always bring good luck to the Japanese people, because that is their culture, that is their tradition. So I do think that these are all yokai, these five elders. And this one, yeah, because the Oni is also a yokai in the Japanese culture. So I do think that Saint Garcia Saturn is an Oni yokai, but not an ordinary Oni. This horn right here is typical of a Mazuku. So a Mazuku are demonic entities. They are extremely strong demonic entities, yokai in the Japanese culture. So I do think, since the Gorosei are stated to be the most powerful forces of the world government, so this has a lot of things to say about his power. So I don't think that I do think that Saint J. Garcia Saturn has the power of a mythical Zoan of Oni, and that Oni is a Mazuku, a Mazuku Oni. So that's just it. So that's my theory. Yep, he's on his way to Egghead Island. That's Saint J. Garcia Saturn. Yeah. Okay, so he's now about to discuss that close to where Saint J. Garcia was. So next to Saint J. Garcia Saturn was this blonde man, this blonde Gorosei. So he was telling that because of the blonde features, he might be related in some way to the Germa or to Sanji. But I don't think it is, because the other siblings of Sanji doesn't have the blonde hair. They have different hair, like they have green, they have red. I really don't know. Sanji's father have a blonde hair. His mother as well has a blonde hair. Typical of the world nobles have blonde hair, like Sabo, Don Quixote family, Steri. So most of these people that have a bloodline of world nobles have blonde hair. So I don't think really part of the Germa. So what he was saying, that this blonde man here, his silhouette over here, Mythical Zoan Devil Fruit ability, might have to do with some sort of yokai with a large mouth, with a mouth that is like a gaping mouth. So he's not referring to anything, what type of yokai that is, but I do think that this might be let me check. I really think that it could be a boogeyman. So there is a Japanese I forgot the name of that yokai, but he was like a boogeyman in the Japanese culture. That yokai, and is monstrous in size. Is really huge. And then you know the boogeyman doesn't really walk the normal walk. He's like he's crawling on the surface. So when what we saw there from Sama coming from those from those array of seemingly like an endless stairs. There are lots of stairs there, and then the area is like an arena of some sort. Then from the empty throne, you have to go down this several steps of stairs, stairway. So we saw how huge that creature was. So I do think that it is a boogeyman, but then the boogeyman of the Japanese culture, you have a very huge yokai who was also, because he often wanders at night trying to basically do the yokai thing. So I do think that this one here is a boogeyman yokai. So and then the next to the blonde man, to the blonde Gorosei, was this samurai, Mahatma Gandhi looking samurai. So this one is Venus. So it's not really a cloud. I have already said that before, but I do think that he's the mythical Zoan Devil Fruit has to deal with Shinigami. I really think because Shinigami is represented in the Japanese culture also as a yokai, a spirit of some sort, or something like that. So it really looks like a Shinigami. When Zoro was unconscious, he was like physically taking all those pain, all those damages from the battle, and Zoro could barely his consciousness, barely hold his consciousness. There was this figure like Grim Reaper figure, so like Soul Reaper. This could be this could be that guy right there. So he could be a Shinigami. A Shinigami is a yokai in the Japanese culture. And remember Zoro? And then there's that person holding a scythe. So this could be that person. The mythical zone ability is a Soul Reaper, a Shinigami. So here he was telling us that this one is Mercury, this one is Venus, this one is Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. I don't think that he got this all right, but we will see because later on the names of these Gorosei will be revealed. This might be interchanged, so we don't know yet if this is the correct assignment of the names. So we'll try to look on that. So, anyways, he's referring now to the very large, very tall man. So that very tall man has these mythical Zoan ability that's connected to a bird figure. So I do think that this bird is a tengu. The tengu in the Japanese folklore. So the tengu, he is a birdman. So he's a bird yokai, bird-related yokai, and he is one of the most powerful entities, one of the most powerful yokais in the Japanese folklore, that tengu. The tengu is really one of the most powerful, Japanese yokai. So I do think that is a Tengu. So there's no other way to guess what type of yokai that is. There's only one prominent character in terms of yokai that is bird-like in features in the Japanese folklore, and that is a Tengu. So, and then this guy right here on the last. So this guy here. I do think this guy is the most powerful among the Gorosei, just because he sports these really ridiculously large mustache. So I do think, as I've said it before, Oda has a particular liking for, characters with ridiculous facial features, just like Whitebeard having this, unique mustache. So we all know how powerful Whitebeard was. So I really do think that out of these 5 Gorosei, this one right here with a really, really huge mustache is the most powerful Gorosei. And so his devil. So he was saying that that Gorosei right there, that bald Gorosei with that insanely huge mustache, his Mythical Zoan Devil Fruit has a resemblance or similarity to a very large, to a very large elephant. So he remembers from that point. He remembers the power of Jack the Drought, right? So it's like a very large mammoth. So ancient mammoth devil. I don't think so again. We all know that elephant, the mammoth is an ancient zoan, right? So, but the elephant is like a regular zoan. So, but I can picture it that these Gorosei have very weak zoan abilities. So talking about regular zoans, I don't think that they are special. So I do think that their devil fruits are really mythical zoan types, and that they are extremely powerful. So instead of referring to an elephant or a mammoth or something like that, I do think that this man's devil fruit ability is a mythical zoan devil fruit elephant, but the model is the Baku. The Baku in the Japanese is also a yokai. So, he eats people's dreams. So that's the power of the Baku. The Baku is actually one of the most powerful Japanese cryptids in existence. It's not really existing, but it is portrayed as one of the most powerful Japanese cryptids, the Baku. That elephant with he had like that Baku thing had like the trunk of an elephant, but then his powers are he will eat people's dreams, like basically just that's his power. It's extremely powerful. So when you try to represent that in the One Piece universe, and we all know the will of D, the initials. It could really mean that this D represents people's dreams, right? So the will of D, will of dreams. So this guy right here might be so super strong, just like Rob Lucci leading an entire gang of CP0 or CP9, but this one is leading the Zero Division of the Gote 13, the Zero Division, which is the Royal Guards, something like that. They are like the Royal Guards of One Piece because they are guarding Imusama himself. They are on the top of the command. So this guy right here might be the second most powerful after Imusama. So his devil fruit abilities could be the Baku. He will eat the will of the dreams. So we all know what the Baku does, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it might be a Baku. We'll see. Minotaur. I don't think this is a Minotaur. I don't think so. I would have to agree with him that it could be an Oni, and then not just an ordinary Oni, it could be the Mazuku Oni. The Mazuku have these horns, so they are like devils. So, this one right here, no, it doesn't make sense at all. It's like comparing this to, saber-tooth tiger, saber mythical lion. No, 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 no. I don't think so. Yeah, Tengu. The Tengu is a bird, so I don't see where this part right here. This really looks like a Grim Reaper, like a Soul Reaper. So I really don't think that this is a Tengu. It's absurd. This Tengu right here belongs to this Gorosei, because this Gorosei, the Tengu is a bird. So, yeah, so this should be the Tengu right here, not this one. This looks like a Soul Reaper. And then this Mythical Zoan, no, I don't think so again. This is they got, most of the time that people have all these theories about One Piece, they get it all wrong. Just like all those people guessing that Monkey D. Luffy might have the powers of, Son Goku, right? The Monkey King. But then it turns out that Luffy just have the powers of Sun God Nika. So many people right there, they stand themselves corrected, right? So they were guessing all these types of, predictions. They were making all this stuff. They're predicting. They're trying to, voice out their wildest imaginations of what the powers of Luffy could be. Just like they're trying to say that Luffy might be the Monkey King, right? Son Goku, but it didn't happen at all. So we later on we know that Luffy was actually Sun God Nika. So and this, no, it's really absurd. I think this one is a Masuku Oni. This one right here is a boogeyman. The boogeyman in the Japanese folklore, which is a giant. I just forgot the name of that giant, but I do think this is a boogeyman. So, and this one right here is a Soul Reaper. It's a Soul Reaper, Shinigami in the Japanese folklore and the Japanese Yokai. This one is the Tengu, not this one. This one is the Tengu right here, and this one is the Baku, because I see that it may have a trunk of an elephant. So, the Baku is like an elephant. So, no, I don't think. That's all wrong. All wrong. No, absolutely not. Yeah, so we will wait for that until the official reveal. Yeah, as you may see here, this is the blonde guy, right? That really huge. This one, he's crawling. So instead of walking upright, he's crawling from the stairways. So he's going down, but then he's crawling. He was not like he was in an upright position. And the boogeyman really likes to crawl, right? I've seen lots of pictures, lots of, moving cinematic scenes regarding the boogeyman. The boogeyman's like crawling. So this really looks like a gigantic boogeyman from the Japanese folklore, Japanese yokai. This one is an oni, but not all oni had horns like that. Some oni had only one horn in the forehead, but the Mazuku usually is portrayed as having demonic horns, like it's the Mazuku really. So not the Masuko from Yu Yu Hakusho, right? So it's not that, not the Masuko from Yu Yu Hakusho. What I meant by Masuko is the Masuko of the Japanese folklore, the Japanese Yokai Masuko, where they have these type of forms. So on this one, it really looks like a Grim Reaper, a Soul Reaper. So this may have, like this could be a weapon of some sort, like a scythe, or but we can't see it clearly because it's just a silhouette. Here it really looks like a Tengu. This one is the Baku, the Dream Eater, the Baku. So it really makes sense to me that all these are yokai characters, but then they just guess it beyond what is what is really probable. So okay, so here again, Wapol is insanely afraid of the Gorosei and Imusaba. He had witnessed something that he shouldn't have witnessed. So he's running. He wants to run straight to the edge of the world just to hide from these extremely powerful people. So that's all. I'm gonna be back for another reaction video. I think that I may have overdone this and took me long several minutes. So yeah, so that would be it. Thank you, and watch out for my next upload still about this One Piece reaction stuff. So thank you very much. Bye bye.